Dear children, welcome to your English class. Today we are going to read a wonderful lesson. Memories are made of buttermilk. Before we go through the lesson, let us read a little bit about the author who has written this story. She is Shobha Narayan. Shobha Narayan is an author and a journalist. She writes about different subjects like food, travel, music, and art for many publications. She studied in Mount Holyoke College, Women's Christian College, and the Columbia Journalism School. She has written 3 books, Katha, Monsoon Diary, and Written to India. Children, the lesson that you are about to read is a very warm, inspiring story about this narrator's grandmother making buttermilk. How many of these items do your mothers and grandmothers make at home? Do you know any items made by using buttermilk? Here are some: lassi, sambaram, chas, mint buttermilk. Okay, now tell me, how many of these items do your mothers and grandmothers make at home? Okay, what food items can you cook? Can you share the recipe of these items with the class? Okay, anyway, let us read what the narrator has got to tell us about her childhood memories. This is paragraph 1, page number 102. My first memory of buttermilk is warmth and darkness. I must have been 5 or 6 years old. A pleasant swishing sound drew me to my grandmother's kitchen. My grandmother was sitting on the floor, her legs spread out and resting against the wall. Soft light came in through the window in front of her. Between her knees was a heavy mud pot. A tall wooden mattu or butter churner was placed inside this pot. So the narrator is trying to tell us about her memory when she was 5 or 6 years old only. So her first thing that she remembers was a pleasant swishing sound that came from where her grandmother was working in the kitchen. So what was her grandmother doing? Her grandmother was sitting on the floor, her legs spread out and resting against the wall. And what was she doing? Between her legs, she had kept a heavy mud pot, and with a tall wooden mattu or butter churner, it was placed inside this pot. As the narrator remembers, soft light came in through the window in front of her. It tells us that it was early in the morning. Page number 103. I walked into the cool kitchen. My grandmother turned. Her beautiful face crinkled into a smile, but she didn't say anything. She was quietly busy. She held the 2 ends of a rope that was coiled around the butter churner. They moved back and forth in a rhythm. My grandmother was both alert and relaxed. I had seen her in this position many times. So is this the first time that the girl is seeing her grandmother doing something in the kitchen? No. So as she walked into the cool kitchen, she saw her grandmother. Her grandmother's beautiful face crinkled into a smile, and silently she was doing her thing. She was busy. What was she doing? She held the 2 ends of a rope that was coiled around the butter churner, and she was pulling it to and fro, and they moved back and forth in a rhythm. So this was the movement. Her grandmother was both alert and relaxed. and the narrator had seen her in this position many times. I slipped under her hands and sat down against the C-shaped curve of her body. My legs were spread out like hers, my hands level with hers. I leaned against her soft belly. Together we pulled the rope back and forth, making the milk give up its butter. It wasn't milk really, it was the thick yogurt that she had collected for a couple of days. Okay, so as she saw her grandmother doing her work, she also went and sat on her lap. And together they started pulling the rope back and forth, and they made the milk give up its butter. It was not actually milk, okay? It was the thick curd that grandmother had been collecting it for many days. She also spreaded her legs like her grandmother's and leaned against her soft belly. How nice it would have made her feel to sit in the lap of her grandmother, is it not? I loved sitting with my grandmother, matching my arms to hers as we pulled the rope together. I could smell the buttermilk and feel my grandmother's breath on my neck. She didn't say a word, but I felt so safe and comfortable. Some minutes later, the heavy butter lumps began to form. My grandmother poured cold water into the mud pot. We continued churning. Within minutes, the butter lumps floated on top. Then we stopped. Okay, so this paragraph tells us and describes us about the method and the way how grandmother was churning the butter out of the yogurt. So, the author or the narrator loved sitting on her grandmother's lap. She could smell the buttermilk and also feel grandmother's breath on her neck. That means since she was sitting on her lap, she can feel when her grandmother was breathing. Both of them didn't say a word, okay? But she was feeling so safe and comfortable sitting in her grandmother's lap. As they went on doing the churning, to and fro, back and forth, what happened? The heavy butter lumps began to form. Grandmother poured some more cold water into the mud pot and they continued churning. Within minutes, the butter lumps floated on top. Then we stopped, means then they stopped. My grandmother collected all the lumps together in her hands and shaped them together into a round ball. I sat still, waiting for the best part. My grandmother put the big round ball into a vessel filled with water where it floated like those white planets that we drew in our geography book. Then she collected the smaller lumps of butter that were still floating inside, made a small ball and looked at me. Obediently, I opened my mouth. In went the freshly churned butter. It tasted of the saltiness of my grandmother's hand, the sweetness of cow's milk, and the slight sourness of the yogurt cream that we collected. Okay, 10 years later, my grandmother still made buttermilk, but now it was with her mixie that my uncle had brought for her. It made churning a lot easier. She put thick yogurt into the blender, added ice cold water from the fridge, and pressed a switch. After 5 minutes, the yogurt would foam on top. The bubbles were the signal for my grandmother. Okay, children, now the author has grown up. She must have been now 15 years, right? Because she was 5 or 6 years then, and now she's telling us something that is happening 10 years later. That means now she must be of 15 or 16 years. She's a young girl now. What is she telling us? She's saying that her grandmother still continued to make buttermilk, but only now it was in her mixie that her uncle had brought for her. So now the churning is a lot easier for grandmother. And as she pressed the switch, the yogurt would form on top. The bubbles were the signal for my grandmother that the buttermilk is getting ready, or the butter is getting ready. She added a little more water and pressed the switch once again. Soon lumps of butter would form. She would collect the large lumps and form them as before into a large round ball. The remaining lumps went into my mouth. They still tasted like buttery heaven. So foam means, children, it's a form bubbles like in soapy water or fizzy drinks. Okay. So as her grandmother made the butter, still the lumps continued to form. And what would she do? She would collect the large lumps and form them as before into a large round ball. And as she did in her childhood, the remaining lumps went directly into her mouth. And even now she remembers that it tasted like buttery heaven. Every part of India uses buttermilk, children. In Kerala, we simply water it down, put in a few fresh curry leaves and drink it as sambara. In Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, buttermilk is spiced with green chilies, ginger, curry leaves and salt, all of which are crushed and added to the buttermilk. We call this majjigi or neermor. Much of North India adds a combination of roasted and ground cumin, some salt, a dash of lemon juice and crushed pudina or mint leaves to their buttermilk, or chas as it is called. This watery, delicious and light drink is excellent for digestion and cooling the body. Punjab, of course, has its famous lassis made with thick buttermilk mixed with fruits like mango. Mango lassi is available all over the world at Indian restaurants. Bengal, I think, doesn't have buttermilk. They prefer their mishti dahi, not the lighter drink. Children, mishti dahi, like we discussed in our previous class, it is the thick curd, and Bengalis, they like thick curd. The beauty of buttermilk is that it is for everyone. No matter how rich or poor, all of India enjoys this drink. Down the road from where I live is a pushcart vendor. All she has on her cart is a red earthen pot filled with buttermilk that she sells to auto drivers, bicycle messengers, and anyone who needs a cool drink on a hot day. So children, the author is describing how buttermilk is liked by everyone in India. So she says no matter how rich or poor a person is, everyone enjoys this drink. And she says that as she watches down the road from where she lives, she can even see a pushcart vendor, a person who sells items like drinks and fizzy drinks, etc. on a cart. So all she can see is that a lady has her cart with a red earthen pot filled with buttermilk. And whom does she sell these? She sells to auto drivers, bicycle messengers, and anyone who needs a cool drink on a hot day. Wow, isn't it wonderful? Now, the author says, as for me, I prefer buttermilk to yogurt. Okay, now she says, instead of yogurt, she also prefers buttermilk only. If I had a choice, I would drink my grandmother's buttermilk, but she is dead now. I still have her wooden churner though. Every now and then, particularly on hot summer days, I think of bringing it out and setting up with 2 coils of ropes, just as it was in my grandmother's kitchen. What a wonderful memory she is trying to share with us, is it not, children? She says that she still prefers her grandmother's buttermilk, but her grandmother is dead. And she still cherishes and safely she has kept her wooden churner. So every now and then, particularly on summer days, the author thinks of bringing out this setup with 2 coils of ropes, and she wishes to make her grandmother's buttermilk just as it was in her grandmother's kitchen. So children, please remember, something that is a symbol of our history and traditions is our heritage. We should protect and respect our heritage because only by learning about our past we can prepare for our future. So, the speaker still has her grandmother's wooden butter churner. Although many modern blenders are available today, the old churner is very, very precious to her. I hope you enjoyed reading this beautiful narrative. Here's a small assignment for you. You have to read the story from the text and write about your favorite memory, okay? A family member you're close to. You can also draw and add color to your imaginative pictures. So all the best and enjoy reading the story and doing this small assignment. Thank you very much and have a glorious day ahead.